It was the night of the 20th of December, 1968. Lake Herman Road, a lonely stretch of asphalt cutting through the fog-drenched fields of Northern California, lay silent under a pale winter moon. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, two teenagers in love, had chosen this secluded spot for their first date. They sat together in David's car, unaware that death was already watching them from the shadows. No witnesses would see what happened next. Sometime after 10:15 p.m., a dark figure approached the vehicle. Gunshots shattered the stillness of the night. David was shot once in the head at close range, dying instantly. Betty tried to flee, but collapsed a few yards from the car, her body riddled with bullets. When police found them, the scene was eerily quiet. No struggle marks, no fingerprints, no signs of robbery, only two young lives violently ended. The randomness of the attack and the cold precision suggested something far more terrifying. This was no crime of passion. This was a killer on the hunt. Unknowingly, Faraday and Jensen became the first victims in a nightmare that would grip Northern California, a nightmare written not just in blood, but in symbols, codes, and fear. Just 6 months after the first murders, terror returned. It was the night of the 4th of July, 1969. America celebrated its Independence Day. But in a quiet parking lot at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo, California, two young lovers found themselves in the crosshairs of a predator. Darlene Ferrin, 22, and Michael Mago, 19, sat in their car under the dark sky, watching fireworks in the distance. Unbeknownst to them, a car pulled up behind them, then drove away, only to return minutes later. A shadowy figure emerged, walked up to their window, and unleashed a barrage of gunfire. Ferrin was shot multiple times and would later succumb to her wounds. Maggio, though critically injured, survived. Just an hour after the attack, a chilling call reached the Vallejo Police Department. "I want to report a double murder. If you go 1 mile east on Columbus Parkway to a public park, you'll find the kids in a brown car." The caller then claimed responsibility for both this and the Lake Herman Road killings. The voice was calm, cold, calculated. The Zodiac had revealed himself, and he was just getting started. On the 1st of August, 1969, 3 newspapers, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Examiner, and the San Francisco Chronicle, each received an envelope. Inside was a chilling letter. The writer claimed responsibility for the murders at Lake Herman Road and Blue Rock Springs Park, but he offered more than confessions. He offered a challenge. Each letter contained 1/3 of a strange, complex cipher made up of 408 characters, a tangled web of symbols, letters, and cryptic markings. The killer demanded that the newspapers publish the cipher on their front pages. If they didn't, he threatened to embark on a weekend-long killing spree, murdering a dozen people. The tone of the letter was chillingly calm. He referred to his victims as slaves he would collect for his afterlife. There was no remorse, only cold, calculated pride. For the first time, law enforcement realized they were dealing with more than just a murderer. This was someone who craved attention, power, and control over the public sphere. By signing his letter with a crosshair symbol, the killer had given himself an identity that would terrify California for years to come. He would soon be known by a single name, Zodiac. The cipher, known as Z408, ignited a frenzy among amateur and professional codebreakers alike. For days, the public stared at columns of mysterious symbols in the newspapers, trying desperately to unlock the killer's message. Finally, after just a week, a schoolteacher named Donald Harden and his wife Betty, both from Salinas, California, cracked the code. It revealed a chilling confession. The Zodiac wrote that he killed because it brought him joy. He described murder as an exhilarating experience, claiming that his victims would serve him as slaves in the afterlife. But despite the vivid details of his philosophy, he omitted one crucial thing: his identity. The decoded message ended with a taunting line: "I will not give you my name because you will try to slow down or stop my collecting of slaves for my afterlife." The Zodiac had proven his intellect and his thirst for control. He wanted the world to know he was clever, superior, untouchable. And by keeping his true name hidden, he became even more terrifying. He wasn't just a killer lurking in the night. He was an idea, a symbol of fear that anyone, anywhere, could become his next victim. The game had only just begun. The 27th of September, 1969, a warm autumn afternoon at Lake Berryessa, Napa County, California. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard, two college students, found a peaceful spot along the lakeshore for a lazy picnic. The sunlight danced on the water, and a soft breeze stirred the golden leaves. It felt safe, ordinary, perfect. Until the stranger appeared. Wearing a bizarre black hood with clip-on sunglasses and a white crosshair symbol stitched onto his chest, he approached them holding a gun. Speaking calmly, he told them he was an escaped convict who needed money and a car to flee to Mexico. To avoid harm, he said, he needed to tie them up. Hartnell and Shepard complied, lying face down on the grass. But instead of fleeing, the masked figure drew a long knife and brutally stabbed them both. He plunged the knife 6 times into Brian Hartnell and 10 times into Cecilia Shepard. After the attack, he casually walked back to Hartnell's car and scrawled a chilling message on the door. The dates of his previous murders, the location, and a large, menacing zodiac symbol. Miraculously, Brian Hartnell survived. Cecilia Shepard, despite desperate efforts, died 2 days later. This was different from previous attacks. It was personal. It was brutal. And it made one thing horrifyingly clear: the Zodiac was evolving. He wasn't content with simply shooting victims from a distance anymore. He wanted to feel their fear, up close. San Francisco, the 11th of October, 1969. The bustling city, alive with Saturday night energy, seemed worlds away from the horror that was about to unfold. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old cab driver, picked up a passenger in the bustling downtown district. The man directed him toward the wealthy Presidio Heights neighborhood. Nothing seemed unusual until they reached Washington and Cherry Streets. Without warning, the passenger pulled out a gun and shot Stein once in the head at point-blank range. The cab coasted forward and came to a slow, silent stop against the curb. The killer didn't flee immediately. Instead, he calmly wiped the cab interior for fingerprints, took Paul's wallet and keys, and most chilling of all, tore away a piece of Paul's blood-soaked shirt. 3 teenage witnesses across the street saw the killer leaving the cab and alerted police. But in a tragic error, the initial police bulletin mistakenly described the suspect as a black male. Because of this, a white man walking calmly away, the real killer was briefly stopped and then released. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter. Inside was a scrap of Paul Stein's bloody shirt, proving the Zodiac's claim of responsibility. This wasn't lovers' lanes anymore. The Zodiac had escalated, striking in the heart of a major city, mocking the police, and showing he could kill whoever he wanted, whenever he wanted. Fear gripped San Francisco. The Zodiac had evolved once again, and no one felt safe. After the murder of Paul Stein, the Zodiac's hunger for attention only grew stronger. Throughout late 1969 and into 1970, he bombarded newspapers with a series of chilling letters. Each was laced with taunts, threats, and cryptic ciphers more complex than the last. One of the most famous was the Z340 cipher, a sprawling 340-character code sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. It remained unsolved for over 50 years, baffling professional cryptologists, FBI code experts, and amateur sleuths alike, until finally being cracked by a team of private citizens in 2020. The letters weren't just about ciphers. They were filled with vivid threats, plans to blow up school buses, promises of random shootings, vows to keep killing until the police caught him, or until he was stopped another way. He signed every letter with his signature crosshair symbol, reinforcing the myth he was building around himself. Each new message made headlines. Each cipher teased at the possibility of learning his real identity, and each time, the public was left frustrated, scared, and obsessed. The Zodiac wasn't just committing murders. He was waging psychological warfare. By seizing control of the media narrative, he turned his crimes into a twisted form of performance art, one where fear was the canvas and his words were the brushstrokes. The more the world tried to understand him, the more powerful he became. And with every unsolved cipher, the Zodiac's legend grew darker and more unstoppable. In subsequent letters, the Zodiac began boasting about his growing body count. He claimed that he had killed 37 people, a staggering number compared to the 5 confirmed murders linked to him by law enforcement. But there was a problem. No evidence surfaced for most of the additional victims he bragged about. No matching reports of missing persons. No unsolved murders neatly fitting his timeline. Was the Zodiac inflating his legacy to terrify the public even more? Or were there truly dozens of other victims, lost in the shadows, never properly linked to his trail of terror? It's a question that has haunted investigators for decades. Every unsolved murder in Northern California from that era, every body found along a roadside, every missing teenager, raised the chilling possibility. Could this be another forgotten victim of the Zodiac? The truth may never be known. Maybe he lied to boost his infamy. Maybe he didn't. That ambiguity, the uncertainty, made him even more terrifying. The Zodiac didn't need to pull the trigger to kill anymore. He had already succeeded in another way. By embedding his name permanently into the nightmares of an entire generation, his weapon was no longer just a gun or a knife, it was fear itself. Over the decades, hundreds of men fell under suspicion for being the Zodiac. But one name has always stood out: Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was a former schoolteacher with a troubling history, dismissed from his job for inappropriate behavior, obsessed with violence, and known to wear a Zodiac-style watch featuring the infamous crosshair symbol. When police searched his home in the early 1970s, they found guns, bomb-making materials, and bizarre writings hinting at dark fantasies. Allen matched the general description given by surviving witnesses. He even owned a typewriter and brand of boots linked to some Zodiac evidence. Yet, there was no definitive proof. Handwriting samples didn't match the Zodiac letters. Fingerprint comparisons came back inconclusive. And DNA testing decades later failed to connect him. Allen remained the prime suspect until his death in 1992, but he was never charged. Beyond Allen, other suspects emerged like Rick Marshall, a projectionist fascinated with cryptography, and Ross Sullivan, a disturbed library worker who resembled Zodiac composites. Each seemed plausible. Each had suspicious gaps in their histories. But none could be definitively tied to the crimes. The reality was chilling. Either the Zodiac had escaped justice altogether, or he had lived out his life in plain sight, blending in among the very people hunting him. The truth remains buried, just like the faces of so many victims. More than half a century has passed, but the shadow of the Zodiac still lingers over America's consciousness. The Zodiac Killer became a symbol not just of violence, but of mystery, defiance, and the terrifying idea that evil could hide in plain sight. His taunting letters, cryptic ciphers, and mocking of law enforcement captivated the public and fueled a culture of fascination with true crime. Books were written. Movies were made. Theories flourished. Amateur sleuths spent entire lives chasing a ghost, a phantom who had once dared an entire nation to find him, and won. In 2007, director David Fincher released the film Zodiac, bringing renewed attention to the unsolved mystery and introducing a new generation to the legend. Even now, every breakthrough in DNA technology sparks hope. Could the Zodiac finally be unmasked? And yet, every lead fades into mist. The true identity of the Zodiac remains one of the greatest unanswered questions in American criminal history. Maybe he died unknown. Maybe he lived an ordinary life after his crimes, forever savoring the fear he sowed. Or maybe he's still out there, watching, waiting. A reminder that sometimes the most frightening monsters are not the ones we see, but the ones who remain invisible.